Priscilla Presley thought she knew every corner of Graceland, until she found a dusty suitcase Elvis packed the week before he died. Inside was a plane ticket to a city he never mentioned, and a handwritten note that changed everything she believed about his final days. Why was he leaving, and who was he going to see? Graceland stood unusually still on August 20th, 1977, just 4 days after Elvis passed. Even the air felt heavy, like the whole house was holding its breath. Priscilla walked through the quiet hallway, her footsteps soft on the carpet Elvis once paced during long nights. The usual hum of music was gone. No laughter from the guys downstairs. Just silence. She wasn't searching for anything. She only wanted to gather a few personal items, to feel close to him for a moment. But grief has a strange way of guiding your steps, leading you toward things you never planned to find. She stopped outside a narrow upstairs closet, one Elvis always kept closed. She remembered asking him about it once. He just smiled and shrugged, like it was nothing. But today, the doorknob felt warm in her hand, as if the room itself wanted to be opened. The door creaked softly. Dust drifted through a beam of sunlight. The closet was almost empty, except for one object. A suitcase, dark blue, scuffed around the edges. A small leather tag with gold letters AP. Her heartbeat jumped. Why would he keep a packed suitcase hidden here? And why did it look like it hadn't been touched in years? Or maybe days? She knelt in front of it. Her fingers hovered over the zipper. She hesitated, as if opening it might change something she wasn't ready to face. What would you do if you found the last secret someone you loved left behind? Would you open it? Or walk away? She took a slow breath and unzipped it. Inside, everything was folded with careful hands. Shirts pressed neatly, a small toiletry bag, a worn passport, and beneath the clothes, a single envelope. Her pulse quickened. She lifted the envelope and froze. It wasn't addressed to her. It wasn't addressed to anyone. Beneath it, she spotted something else. A crisp piece of paper with airline markings. Plane ticket. Priscilla's breath caught. She pulled it out, her eyes scanning the date. August 17th, 1977. The day after he died. The sight hit her like cold water. Elvis had planned to leave Graceland. He had packed. He had prepared. But he never told a soul. The silence of the room deepened, pressing around her. What journey had Elvis been ready to take? What destination had he kept hidden? And why did he plan to go alone? Her hands trembled, the ticket glowing faintly in the shaft of afternoon light. And in that moment, she knew this wasn't just a suitcase. It was the beginning of a story Elvis never got to finish. Priscilla carried the suitcase into the brighter part of the hallway, needing more light. Her hands were cold. Her heartbeat felt too loud inside the quiet house. She lifted the plane ticket again, almost afraid she'd misread it the first time. But there it was. Date: August 17th, 1977. Destinación: Buenos Aires, Argentina. The day after Elvis died. And a place he had never once mentioned to her. It made no sense. Elvis talked openly about everything. His shows, his worries, even the smallest road stories. But this? Not a single hint. Not one stray comment. Why would Elvis Presley, in the final week of his life, plan a secret trip to South America? She dug deeper into the suitcase. Folded shirts, pair of sunglasses, a small notebook with worn pages. Inside the notebook were quick scribbles. Reminders, numbers, half-finished lyrics, the simple things he always jotted down before traveling. But nothing explained why he was leaving. Then she noticed something tucked into the side pocket of the suitcase. A photograph, its edges curled slightly. Priscilla lifted it carefully. The picture showed Elvis standing backstage in Nashville, early 1960s. And beside him, a young man she didn't recognize. Dark hair, warm smile, a hand resting on a soundboard. Who was he? And why was his photo in the suitcase Elvis planned for his final journey? A chill crept up her spine. Priscilla realized she needed answers. Not tomorrow. Not later. Now. She picked up the phone in the hallway and dialed a number she knew by heart. Joe Esposito, Elvis's right-hand man for years. If anyone knew the truth behind this suitcase, It was Joe. He answered quickly. His voice cracked slightly when he said her name. Everyone in the inner circle was still shaken. "Joe, I found something," she said quietly. "A suitcase. And a plane ticket." There was a pause. A deep one. "A ticket to where?" he finally asked. "Buenos Aires." The silence on the other end changed deeper, heavier. She felt it through the receiver. "Priscilla," Joe whispered. "He didn't tell you?" Her grip tightened around the phone. "Tell me what?" Joe exhaled, slow and uneven. The trip wasn't for a concert. It wasn't for business. His voice lowered. "It was personal." Her stomach tightened. "Personal how?" Joe didn't answer right away. She could hear him pacing, the floor creaking under his steps. There was someone he needed to see. Someone he owed something to. Another shock hit her. Elvis had debts she never knew about? Emotional ones? Promises he hadn't spoken of? Why do we only learn the deepest truths about the people we love when it's already too late to ask them? "Joe," she said firmly. "Who was the trip for? Who was he going to see?" "He never told me the full story," Joe whispered. "But he showed me a photograph once. A man who meant more to him than anyone realized." Priscilla felt her blood run cold as she slowly lifted the photograph she found in the suitcase. It was the same man. "Joe," she breathed. "I have that photo right here." Her voice shook. What was Elvis hiding? Priscilla held the photograph up to the sunlight, studying the young man beside Elvis. The backstage hallway in the background looked familiar. Shiny floor, folding chairs stacked against a wall, a microphone stand leaning in the corner. Nashville, early 1960s. She had been there during those years. So why didn't she remember this man? She turned the photo over. Nothing written. No date. No clue. But the way Elvis stood beside him, shoulders relaxed, smiling without posing, meant something. Elvis only looked like that around people he trusted. People who shaped him when the cameras weren't around. She needed the truth. She drove to Joe Esposito's house that same afternoon. The August heat pressed down on Memphis, thick and slow, as she pulled into his driveway. Joe met her at the door, his eyes tired, but warm. Elvis's death had aged everyone overnight. Priscilla held up the photograph. "Who is he?" Joe closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded toward the kitchen table. "Sit down. This one goes back farther than most people know." She sat. The house smelled like old coffee and grief. Joe slid the photo closer to him. His name was Miguel Alvarez. He was a young sound technician from Argentina. Came to Nashville in '62. Worked behind the scenes at a few smaller shows. Priscilla leaned in. "Did Elvis know him well?" Joe nodded. More than anyone realized. Outside, a car drove past. The distant hum rattled the quiet. Joe continued, "One night, during a rehearsal at the National Guard Armory summer of '63, there was an electrical fault on stage. A cable snapped. Elvis grabbed the mic without knowing it was live. Priscilla's breath caught. Joe's voice dropped. Miguel saw it before anyone else. He pushed Elvis backward and took the shock himself. The room felt suddenly colder. Priscilla whispered, "He saved him." Joe nodded. Doctors said another second and Elvis could have been gone. Miguel stayed in the hospital for 3 days. Elvis visited twice, but then the schedule pulled him away. Life got busy. Fame got loud. Priscilla pressed her hand to her chest. Elvis never mentioned this. "Why?" "Because he felt guilty," Joe said. "He promised Miguel he'd repay him one day. But Miguel disappeared back to Argentina soon after. No forwarding address. No contact." Priscilla stared at the photograph again. A young man with calm eyes. A man who risked his life to save Elvis. Joe wiped his face. "Last month, Elvis got a letter. From Buenos Aires." Priscilla's heart thudded. What did it say? Miguel was sick. Very sick. He asked if Elvis remembered him. He said he'd love to see him again. Before things got worse. Priscilla felt a wave of emotion sweep over her. She imagined Elvis reading that letter alone, feeling the weight of a promise made 14 years ago. She swallowed. Is that why he packed the suitcase? Joe nodded. Elvis didn't tell anyone, but he was going. Alone. Priscilla felt her pulse race, her fingers trembling around the photo. Then Joe's voice softened. There's more. He slid a small envelope across the table. Elvis wrote something. For Miguel. What would you have done if you found a letter a loved one never got to send? Priscilla stared at the envelope Joe placed on the table. It was worn at the edges, like someone had held it many times before deciding what to do with it. Her heartbeat slowed, then quickened again, as if her body already knew whatever sat inside would change everything. Elvis wrote this? She whispered. Joe nodded. The night before he packed the suitcase. The room felt heavier. Priscilla slid her finger under the flap, opening it carefully, like the paper might break. Inside was a single folded page. Elvis's handwriting flowed across it. Strong, looping letters she recognized instantly. She unfolded it. It wasn't a song. It wasn't a note for a fan. It wasn't a message for the world. It was a letter to Miguel. Her eyes moved across the page slowly, taking in each word. Miguel, you saved my life once. I've carried that with me every day. I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. I'm coming to see you. Not for show business. Not for anyone else. Just for us. Priscilla paused. Her throat tightened. She continued reading. There are things I never said. Things I should have told you years ago. You were there in a moment when I could have lost everything. I owe you more than I ever repaid. Her hands trembled slightly. She felt Elvis in these words, raw, human, stripped of the spotlight and the stage. Then she reached the last line. A line that hit her like a cold drop of water down her spine. There's something I must tell you in person. She exhaled sharply. In person? What did he mean? Joe rubbed his forehead, looking older than his years. I asked him the same thing. He wouldn't tell me. The room seemed to shrink around them. Short burst. Sharp impact. A reveal that lands and stays. Elvis wasn't planning a trip of escape. He was planning a meeting of truth. Priscilla held the letter closer, feeling the ink under her fingertips like a pulse. He wanted closure, she whispered. Or forgiveness. Or both. Joe nodded. He told me once, some debts aren't paid with money. The letter trembled slightly in her hands. Elvis had been carrying this secret for 14 years. A secret no one knew. Not the fans. Not the guys. Not even her. What kind of truth was he carrying? And why did he feel he needed to say it face to face? A breeze slipped through the open window, rustling the edges of the letter. For a moment, it almost felt like Elvis was in the room. Quiet, thoughtful, waiting for her reaction. Priscilla folded the letter back into the envelope, her movements slow, careful. I need to know what he wanted to tell Miguel. Joe hesitated. That means going deeper into the past. And into people he trusted far from here. She lifted her eyes, steadier now. Then we'll go, she said. But Joe didn't miss the flicker of fear behind her determination. Because hidden truths don't stay quiet without a cost. Priscilla left Joe's house with the letter pressed against her chest like it carried heat. The sky was dimming over Memphis, turning the streets gold and then gray. She drove back to Graceland, replaying Elvis's words in her mind. I'm coming. There's something I must tell you in person. What truth had been waiting 14 years? And why had Elvis chosen the final week of his life to finally speak it? Back inside Graceland, she sat at his old office desk. The suitcase lay open beside her. She carefully lifted the notebook Elvis packed and flipped through its pages. Quick reminders, scribbled lyrics, grocery lists, ordinary things. But on one page, a phone number was circled twice. Under it, Elvis had written, "Call before flight." Her breath caught. She dialed the number. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then a woman answered, her voice accented and gentle. "Clinica San Martin," she said. "How may I help you?" Priscilla's heart thudded. "My name is Priscilla Presley. I'm calling about a patient, Miguel Alvarez." There was a pause. A long one. "You're calling from the United States?" "Yes." I remember him, the nurse said softly. And I remember a man who called for him 2 weeks before he passed. His voice was very recognizable. Priscilla swallowed. Elvis. Yes, the nurse whispered. He asked how Miguel was doing. He sounded worried. Priscilla felt her chest tighten as the nurse continued. Miguel was very sick. He asked many times if the singer Elvis Presley still remembered him. When I told him Elvis had called, he cried. A soft ache filled Priscilla. Elvis had remembered. He had carried the guilt, the gratitude, the unfinished promise. Then the nurse added something unexpected, something sharp, something that shook the room around her. Señora, Elvis didn't ask about only one patient. He asked about 2. Priscilla straightened. 2? Yes, Miguel and his daughter Lucia. The name landed like a sudden crack in the quiet. The nurse continued. She was here often. She adored your husband. She told us he inspired her to sing. She said he was the spark in her whole dream. Priscilla pressed her hand over her mouth. Elvis hadn't been planning just one visit. He had been planning to help an entire family. The nurse hesitated. He asked how bad her father's condition was, and if she was coping. Priscilla felt her heartbeat thicken. Elvis was preparing himself. He wasn't escaping fame. He wasn't running away. He was going to say goodbye, to repay a life-saving moment, to lift someone who once lifted him. The nurse's voice softened. He said he would come soon, that he had something important to tell Miguel. Priscilla whispered, he never made it. Silence. Heavy. Real. What was he planning to tell them? She murmured. Her voice cracked, but no answer came, because the only person who knew was gone. Priscilla ended the call and sat in the stillness of Elvis's office. The lamp beside her hummed softly. The suitcase waited open, like it still had more to reveal. She felt pulled toward it, toward whatever Elvis had packed with such care. She reached inside again, her fingers brushing the corner of something small. Tiny velvet box. Light, delicate, almost hidden. She lifted it slowly. On top, written in Elvis's handwriting, was a name, for Lucia. A quiet shock moved through her chest. Elvis had packed a gift for Miguel's daughter. The nurse had said she adored him. A little girl who had once watched him backstage. Now grown, grieving, and carrying her father's fight. Priscilla opened the box. Inside lay a simple silver necklace with a tiny music note charm. Not flashy, not expensive, but deeply personal. The kind of gift Elvis gave only when something truly meant something to him. Why had he chosen this? Why for her? And why now, at the end of everything? She reached again for the notebook, flipping through the pages once more. Near the back, she found a line written in Elvis's hurried handwriting. For Lucia, keep singing. Her breath trembled. He wasn't just planning a visit. He was planning to encourage her, to lift her, to pass something forward before his time slipped away. Elvis always felt responsible for the people who crossed his path. But this was different. This was a man circling back to a moment he never let himself forget. Another page caught her eye. A half-torn note stuck between the sheets. It read, "Tell Miguel the truth." Her pulse jumped. The truth? The truth about what? A shock line hit her like a flashbulb. Elvis had been carrying a confession. She looked at the suitcase again, searching for anything she might have missed. Beneath the shirts, in the bottom corner, she found something else tucked flat. An old backstage pass from Nashville, the edges yellowing. On the back, Miguel had written in tiny letters, "You owe me nothing. Just keep going." Priscilla traced the words with her thumb. Elvis must have saved this for years. Maybe that was why this trip mattered. Maybe he couldn't keep going without closing this circle. Her mind raced. Had Elvis wanted to apologize? Had he wanted to thank Miguel? Or had he wanted to say something far heavier? She looked at the suitcase again, feeling its weight in the room. Elvis had packed clothes, a letter, a necklace, a pass, a memory. This wasn't a trip of escape. It wasn't a desperate move. It was a mission of the heart. Priscilla whispered to the quiet room, "Elvis, What were you trying to finish? But the house didn't answer. Only the soft hum of the lamp responded, steady and sad. And yet, she felt something pull her forward. She wasn't done. The story wasn't done. The next morning, Memphis woke under a soft gray sky. Priscilla felt the weight of the night still sitting on her shoulders as she walked through Graceland's quiet halls. Every room held a memory. Every corner felt like Elvis had just stepped out for a moment and might return at any second. But now she carried a truth he never got to speak, and a mission he never got to finish. She placed the suitcase on the dining table, opening it gently. The letter to Miguel, the necklace for Lucia, the backstage pass, the plane ticket. These weren't random objects. They were pieces of a map, one pointing toward the heart of a man the world thought they fully knew. She imagined Elvis sitting in the same room, packing each item, thinking through every choice. Not as a superstar, not as an icon, but as a man trying to repay a kindness that saved his life. She needed to know more. She needed to understand why Miguel had mattered so deeply, and why Elvis had prepared such a private farewell. She called Joe again. Did Elvis ever mention Miguel after he left Nashville? Joe sighed. More than you'd think. Every few years he'd bring him up, quietly, late at night, when the house was calm. What would he say? She asked. That he wished he could thank him properly. That some things weigh on a man, even when the world thinks he has everything. Outside, a tour bus rumbled past the gates, fans pressing close for a glimpse of the home Elvis left behind. Their muffled voices drifted inside, soft, hopeful, unaware of how much of Elvis's heart they would never truly see. Priscilla looked at the suitcase again. Elvis supported people quietly, didn't he? Joe chuckled sadly. More than anyone knows. Musicians who couldn't pay rent. Sound guys who needed new equipment. Families going through hard times. He helped them all. No cameras. No press. A realization settled into her chest, warm and heavy. The suitcase wasn't unusual. It was consistent. It was Elvis being Elvis, quietly generous, quietly loyal, quietly carrying the weight of every kindness ever shown to him. But this trip, this one was different. More personal. More emotional. Priscilla, Joe added. There was something else he said after reading Miguel's letter. Her breath tightened. What was it? He said, I owe him a goodbye. The words hit her like a soft punch. Elvis had wanted closure. Not applause. Not attention. Just closure. Priscilla folded the suitcase gently, her fingers brushing the plane ticket one more time. She understood now. The journey Elvis never took carried more meaning than anyone realized. But a deeper question rose inside her, sharp and unavoidable. If Elvis had made it to Buenos Aires, what would he have told Miguel? Night settled softly over Graceland, as if the entire mansion was exhaling after a long day of holding memories too heavy to speak. Priscilla walked back into the music room, the place where Elvis laughed, cried, created, and hid pieces of himself the world never got to see. The suitcase waited on the table, quietly glowing under the lamp's warm light. She placed her hand on it, feeling the worn fabric. This wasn't just luggage. It was a story frozen in time. A journey Elvis packed for but never took. A goodbye he wrote but never delivered. A promise left halfway open like a door no one closed. She lifted the necklace again, the one he meant for Lucia. Its small silver note shimmered softly. She imagined the girl, now a young woman, sitting by her father's bedside with music holding her together. Elvis wanted her to keep singing, to keep going. That small charm was his way of passing forward the very thing Miguel once gave him. A spark of connection ran through her, a chain of kindness crossing oceans, decades, and lives. She looked at the letter next. The final line still echoed. There's something I must tell you in person. She whispered it aloud, her voice trembling. What was it, Elvis? But she knew she would never hear that answer. Some truths leave with the person who carried them. Some confessions stay locked inside the heart that bore them. And some mysteries remain tender simply because they were never meant for the world, only for the two souls who shared them. Priscilla folded the letter gently, as if tucking it into rest. She placed it in a private Graceland archive drawer, beside the necklace and the backstage pass. Not for display, not for fans, not for gossip or headlines, for remembrance, because some things aren't meant to be exposed. They're meant to be honored. She closed the drawer softly, her fingers lingering on the handle. The room felt warmer somehow, like Elvis was closer, not farther. And she realized something she wished she'd understood sooner. Elvis wasn't planning an escape. He wasn't running from fame. He wasn't lost or spiraling. He was moving toward something, toward gratitude, toward closure, toward a man who saved him when he was still just a boy with a microphone and a dream. Sometimes the most powerful journeys are the ones a person almost takes, because they show who they truly were inside. Not in front of the cameras, not on stage, but in the quiet moments when no one was watching. Priscilla stepped back from the drawer and whispered, "You mattered, Elvis. More than even you knew." And in that quiet room, the truth settled gently around her. Some hearts shine brightest in the promises they never stopped trying to keep. If the story moved you, share it with someone who still believes small acts can ripple across a lifetime. Moments like these remind us that even legends leave unfinished journeys, and they teach us something about our own. Tell us what this story meant to you, and stay with us for the next untold chapter.